I say liberal media, I really even hate to call them media these days. There is much media, at least as Judicial Watch is media. In my view, many of these media outlets, the mainstream ones that you are used to seeing, CBS, NBC, the Washington Post, you name it, MSNBC, CNN, I've taken to calling them liberal advocacy groups. Now, it doesn't mean they can't engage in journalism from time to time and do press things, but at the end of the day, they're liberal advocacy groups. And you see that in the coverage of the president's comments in an interview with George Stephanopoulos, who was a Clinton operative. He worked for the Clinton campaign, for Hillary, he worked for the Clinton campaign back when President Clinton first ran and won for office. He worked in the Clinton White House, then he left the Clinton White House, eventually was hired by ABC News. And there was a lot of outrage when George Stephanopoulos was first hired by ABC News because he was a political operative and he was being hired by a major television network news outlet. And nowadays that often happens, but back then it didn't happen, at least in such a high-profile way. And ABC News assured Americans at the time, oh, don't worry, George Stephanopoulos is just going to be a commentator. Well, it turns out he's one of the key leaders in their news division now. And it doesn't mean he's a terrible journalist and such, but he is a partisan liberal Democrat. And he may do good journalism, he may do good interviews from time to time, but he's certainly not a conservative, to put it charitably. So he had an interview with President Trump, and he was asked, and you've probably seen the clip, would he call the FBI if approached by a foreign government with information? And President Trump answered quite sensibly, well, what do you mean? I don't know what you mean. If a foreign government or foreigners contacted me and they had information on my opponent, I would listen to what they have to say. And if there was some issue with what they were saying, I'd contact the FBI. But the idea that you don't listen to sources of information because they might come from foreigners or foreign governments is obviously absurd. And then Stephanopoulos says, well, the FBI director says you need to contact the FBI. And President Trump said, well, the FBI director is wrong. And so the predictable, hypocritical, liberal media outrage machine went into high gear. The president is a traitor. He says he'd be willing to work with foreign governments to go after his political opponents, as if President Obama did it. And then Hillary Clinton, of course, did it with the DNC and to hire Fusion GPS, who hired a foreign spy who worked with Russia Intel to attack President Trump. So you had Hillary Clinton, the Democratic president, working hand in glove with the Obama administration to take Russia intelligence information that came from government operatives, obviously, or so they tell us, to target then candidate Trump. And they are yelling about the fact that President Trump says, well, if there's information on a candidate, I'll listen to it, and if need be, I'll contact the FBI. But there's no requirement to contact the FBI. Certainly if issues are raised that make you wonder if there's a foreign intelligence operation going on here or something like that, it might be appropriate to do it. But we do not live in a totalitarian state where we have to communicate our contacts with foreigners to the government. That's what totalitarian states demand of. Remember in the old former Soviet Union, they wanted to know your contacts and communications with foreigners. You were required oftentimes to report that. Is that what they're suggesting now be the case? Hillary Clinton did it. And I was on Hannity this week and I made the point, Hillary Clinton not only got, quote, dirt on her opponent from a foreign government, she got cash from her foreign government partner. As Judicial Watch exposed through Judicial Watch Freedom of Information Act litigation, she received $500,000 personally. How? Through her husband, who got a speaking fee from a Russian foreign government, from a Russia front company. It was an investor for essentially the Russian government, so it was a Russian government operation. They gave him $500,000 to make a speech in Russia. You know, I don't care if you're a former president or not, $500,000 is not a normal speaking fee. And so when you give money personally for a speaking fee to Bill Clinton, you know, the media would like you to forget this, but Bill and Hillary Clinton are married, so his money is her money. So she's Secretary of State, and he's getting cash from the Russian government, quite readily apparent. And he also received cash from other speaking engagements with foreign governments. So she's getting cash directly from these governments through her husband's speaking fees. And we also know separately that millions of dollars, of course, our U.S. intelligence agencies knew this but didn't care, because it was Hillary Clinton and it was Democrats and they protect their own. Tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions, funneled not only to their coffers personally, but to the Clinton Foundation with the hopes of getting a good result on that Uranium One deal. And the president is called a traitor for doing nothing wrong other than suggesting that, yeah, if people have information about my opponent and they're foreigners, of course I might listen. And yeah, I might contact the FBI if it's appropriate. That's the law. People are suggesting the law is you can't talk to foreigners. You can't accept, quote, any information from them. It's not the law, and if it were the law, it'd be unconstitutional. The law prevents foreign governments or foreigners from contributing directly cash contributions to campaigns. But the idea that candidates don't talk to foreign nationals is just absurd. You had members of Congress, Democrats, trying to reach out to the Russians. There's a recording of Adam Schiff with someone who's pretending to be a Russian, and he's quite happy to talk to him because he had pretending to have dirt on President Trump. Christopher Steele's a foreign national. Oh, the left says, well, he was hired. So it's okay if you pay the Russians for dirt on your opponent, but you can't talk to the Russians for dirt on your opponent. It doesn't make any sense, does it? You know why it doesn't make any sense? Because the left is desperate, specifically the Democratic left, because their party was caught in the worst corruption scandal in American history, which is the use of the intelligence agencies in virtually every major agency in the federal government to target one man, Donald Trump. There are other people around him targeted, but the goal was to target and destroy him through spying and other illicit activities. President Trump is a crime victim. They've been caught as the perps of the crime. So they're going to do everything they can to distract from that, including all of this noise about President Trump's innocent comments.